Hello, welcome to Nezo's Bad Shop. I'm your host, Nezo, and you are here because you are looking for tips and tricks and building advice on how to build your Master Drift 1.0, aka the MD 1.0. And I wrote on the manual here purple. Excuse me. I wrote on the manual here purple because this is the purple edition. Look at it. Ooh, yes, beautiful and purple. And one major thing with this particular version, being this the second batch of the Master Drift, as noted in my unbox video, there were some supplements. Crucially, this manual supplement multi-page, I'm calling it a booklet. That's what I'm going to refer to it as, because there's several updates in that alone. And then this sheet, this supplement sheet, which I'll explain the version numbers in a second. This one was positioned on top of every part in the box. So this is the first thing I saw when I unboxed this car. And so what we're going to call this is the original manual, aka the version 1.0 manual, with the original 3-gear installation, as we'll go through. This supplement booklet, this is what we're calling version 1.1, as this has quite a lot of updates from the original manual for 4-gear transmission mode. See that? And several other things. And then this sheet, the single supplement sheet, which is supplement settings to the supplement booklet, which is this booklet's a supplement to this. We're calling this the version 1.2. And shout out to my buddy Sebastian out at Elite Drift Shop. We were chatting about this, and he said he had the great idea of naming these supplements from the original manual as such. So version 1.0, version 1.1 setting, version 1.2. And that's sort of the easiest way I'm going to refer to it, because I double and triple checked the certain steps here, the certain parts, pages or whatever, page 11, things like that. Like, I made sure once I got to some of these addendum areas, I triple checked stuff, and I wanted to see what was different between each thing. So I've made some notes and some other stuff I just remember from the build. But there's areas in the original manual I wrote stuff, and then there's stuff here I've wrote different things like thread locker and all this and that. And noted what things were actual setting changes, and then in a version 2 sheet there wasn't really anything to write on other than just refer to the certain settings. So, having said all that, we're going to dive into the manual, step 1, and we'll go from there. Now I want to say right away, there was a boo-boo in the unbox video. I said that the slide rack on this car was not adjustable, but it is actually adjustable. It's just only adjustable in one spot compared to the previous slide rack designs from Yokomo, which were 3-way adjustable via cams. Little cam adjuster screws on the bearings, the 3 bearings that go on it. This slide rack still has 3 bearings, but it's only adjustable via the front bearing right there, and it moves back and forward, but it only moves a couple of millimeters like each way, really. So there isn't a ton of adjustment, but there's just enough. So I'm going to adjust my other car, and then we'll see how long that goes before it goes out of adjustment again. But other than that, yeah, that was my mistake. I had totally forgotten that you can adjust them, and in the video I said it was not adjustable at all, so that was my boo-boo. And yes, so I wanted to point that out. Okay, so yeah, and if there's anything else that I remember along the way, I will point it out. And if I miss something, just drop a comment, let me know, yes, we're gonna go from there. Now, some people I've seen in the owners group and someone else actually, a customer of the Elite Drift Shop, said that they did not get any of these supplements in their box. So they had built their car, they got their car built, but there was some issues with the transmission, sort of the way the diff was aligned or something like that. The owner Sebastian there, he got the customer all fixed up, and Sebastian already knew about these manual supplements prior to that customer arriving. So when the customer was saying that he'd struggled, they discovered it was because he never had the supplements to refer to. So he was kind of going at it slightly blind without realizing. So yeah, if you bought one of these and you didn't get the supplements, let me know. And if you wanted to have the supplement settings and stuff, I'm really thinking of scanning these into my computer and making them PDFs, and whoever wants them, I'll post them somewhere, or I'll get them to you, or whatever it is, because these current supplement thingies aren't even available on the Yokomo website yet. They've been a little slow at getting stuff like this on their website. Even the Master Drift setup sheet isn't on the website yet, so hurry up. Now, having covered all that, let's dive into the manual. Step 1. And we'll go from there, just get a few things out of the way here. Okay, so you're going to see me jump between the supplements and the booklet and all that kind of stuff here and there, okay? I'll try to be as clear as possible on the explanations and which thing you should refer to at what time. Basically, this version 1.2 sheet, this is the most up-to-date / correct settings of these areas for the MD 1.0 red purple. Essentially what they're calling the 4-gear version. That's what it says on the screw bag sheet. The version 1.1 spec is also correct for many things on the car except for these things on this sheet. So you'll see me jump back and forth because the manual will have to jump to this, but then some bits of this we jump to that. Okay, so it is trying to make it less confusing because I actually did kind of confuse myself during the build, sort of which thing was I supposed to look at. And crucially, these updated supplements do show that some parts that were assembled on the first batch are not actually on the colored versions as a sort of new setting update. So yes, so having said that, let's go. And oh, one other thing, as far as my build went, all my parts were there. All the parts as per the supplement. I was not missing anything, but there was some things that I'll note along the way, different parts or whatever, but I was not missing anything. All the parts were in my kit. Okay, for such an expensive kit for so many addendums and supplements and stuff, yeah, this build took twice as long as it should have, but I'm glad I took my time because now I can go through everything and help all of you guys for this sort of, this car. Okay. Getting the brain together. So, step 1 on page 4 here. So, and of course we start, and one of my lights here just decides no. This is becoming a tradition that I'm not happy about. I'm going to replace that ring light. I swear, it's not happy. It's not even a ring light. It's just a big light. But, anyways, where were we? Page 4, step 1, the gear diff. Okay, so this is basically the same differential as all the previous Yokomo drift cars. Well, for the YD2 pretty much, and it does come pre-assembled, which is very nice. All you got to do is open it up and fill it full of oil and put it back together, and use the star pattern there for the screws. The screws are already in it, and the only difference between this and the predecessor YD2 cars, the silicone oil that goes in it is number 5,000, whereas previously they all used 10,000 weight oil. So that's the big change. And one thing here that's written here, which I didn't even realize in my other Constructor's Digest, I don't believe I recognize this little blurb here. Coating the gasket with black grease will help provide a better seal. Didn't do this on my other car. Didn't actually do it on this car because I overlooked it. I've built so many of these diffs, I just fired it together. But I think I'm going to try that on the next one. Put some black grease on that seal. See if I can seal it up a bit better, because I've noticed when you fill this diff to that line, eventually a little bit of oil comes out no matter how good you get the screws and the seal. So I've been filling this just a little bit below the line, just so some of it doesn't come out. And so far on the last one I did that way, the oil hasn't come out yet, so that's good. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Fill it with oil, put it up to the line if you want. I just went a little bit below the line from experience, and then screw it back together, and the diff is done. And this is just an exploded view for if you want to do maintenance and or tear it completely apart and put the black grease in those areas. You can totally do that if you want. I don't bother. I leave that alone. And then we move on. So once you get the gear diff done, we move on to step 2. And immediately, this being the 4-gear version, you look at this and go, that's one too many gear. One too many gears less, because that's only 1, 2, and then diff would be 3. And this is a 4-gear model, and they give you the 4th gear. So here's my notes: supplement booklet for the 4-gear transmission. This is where the supplementing begins, pretty much right off the hop. So we whip out the supplement booklet. Here it is, manual supplement for the red purple 4-gear model. And most of the bits here will still be along the side of this. Sometimes it's not, but generally it is. But you can always refer back to this manual, but not entirely. Usually the thing you'll refer back to is for the screws that are needed, but if it's a different set of screws or more set of screws, you'll see it over here, what you'll need for the supplemental steps. So basically, from pages 4 to 5, all of this is all supplemented out, because this is 3-gear mode and this is 4-gear. This car is 4 gear, so this is what you'll be doing. So start here, the manual supplement, okay? You'll install 2 idler shafts instead of 1. Note the position of the idler shaft, because if you put it in the wrong one, the gears will not go together whatsoever. They will not mesh like that. And make sure to apply thread locker to those so those screws don't back out of your transmission. Definitely don't want that. Even if those screws come out, the idler is not going to fall out of the transmission, but it will rattle around and that'll blow up your gears, and that won't be fun. So put some thread locker on that. Life will be good. And from there you move down to the input shaft and the gears, the idler gears there, bearings, and these shims that you'll need, these shims that are noted there. Now put some oil in the bearings, because that will be good. This is a good time to do it. Just a couple drops will be good. Right now I'm still using the Yokomo drift oil, super thin. Look at that stuff. And just a couple drops of that and you're good to go. They do come pre-greased, but I like to throw a little oil in them just so. Now the thing is, when I was unboxing this, I noticed on this is bag 2, for this transmission, 2 extra bearings and 2 extra shims had been stapled to the package of the transmission, and that's so that you can have you'll have the bearings and the shims for that second idler gear, which was already inside of bag 2. So they made sure to add those, to staple the bearings to the outside of the bag, because they weren't inside the bag. So that was an addendum, and they corrected that by adding the bearings. So that's good. So that's where you'll put that in. And once you get those on, don't forget to put that bulkhead link there, the bearing on this side of the transmission bulkhead, and sandwich them together. And these screws, which go on the other side of the idler shafts for the idler gears, put some thread locker on them, screw it together, and away you go. Then you move down to here, where you'll have the top shaft holder. See, there's the top shaft sitting. This right here will be loose at that point until you put that bearing, which that bearing slides into this top shaft holder. It'll go right to the face of this right here. It'll go right to the face of there, and then you will move that all the way onto the transmission, and you'll see those holes will line up with the holes on the transmission. And then these long 18mm screws here go through the motor plate, through the top shaft holder, and screw into the transmission bulkhead right there. And use some thread locker on them so they will keep their position and not rattle loose. And make sure to use that marked position on the motor plate. It is the most middle hole on the motor plate. So when you pick that, you should have 6 holes here and 6 holes here, okay? And that's the position they want, and that's how you get that positioning right there, okay? Very good. Now, continuing, because we're not done, because the transmission is not complete yet. One second, just move a few things out of the way. So if we move the original manual to page 6, we're still supplementing here, okay? Now, where are we here? So this is where you'll put the differential in, okay? And somebody had said on my other Constructor Digest, they had the revised manual, the supplement in theirs, and they were building a purple, I believe, purple or red. They were building a colored car, but they said that their diff was a little stiff or tight, or that the outdrives here were scraping against the back of the chassis. See how tight the tolerance is back there? It shouldn't be touching. There should be very tight clearance. There should be space, but it shouldn't be rubbing. So what I've noted here, besides putting oil on the diff bearings before you put it into the transmission and put the cover on, with thread locker on those screws, because you don't want your diff coming out in the middle of your driving. It says here to note the position, but just the way that is, some people have put them in backwards. So I've written here 4 and the +2, because that is how that should look going there, and then on the opposite on that side. So when you look at the car, see the number 4 there, right where my finger is? That is where the 4 is, and the +2 is on the rear side of the transmission. Okay, so that's how that should be orientated, and then the diff will sit correctly in the transmission, and your diff will be nice and smooth, or your transmission will be nice and smooth. Okay, after that, you move on to the spur gear assembly of the spur gear hub and the spur gear plate, which looks really nice, actually. Look at that. I like that. In purple. And those screws right there, use thread locker on them so that your spur gear assembly there doesn't come apart. while you're drifting or under boost. Definitely don't want that. And once you complete that, make sure to insert the drive pin there on the input shaft. Okay, and then make sure this spur gear holder where you insert that Allen screw, the set screw, into the holder. Put some thread locker on that for sure. You don't want this coming loose because I've seen it happen. Make sure that set screw is being tightened on the flat side of the input shaft. You notice how it's marked, there's a little square there, that's the flat side. Make sure that set screw goes onto that flat side and it will be in there very nice. And it should not come out with the little Loctite. And you should be gravy. So, after you get to this point, we go back to the original manual, okay? Because here's where the spur gear gets installed on the transmission in 3-gear mode. And once we get to this point, we're done supplementing for the moment until we go back to page 7, which is over there. Page 6, the last thing you'll do, that is shown in the original manual now. We're not on the supplement, we're back to the original manual. This is where you install the shock towers on both sides of the bulkhead, the left and the rear, or left and the right, sorry. Use thread locker on those screws. Pretty much use thread locker on any screw that goes into the aluminum. I do that as a general, and my cars pretty much stay assembled 99% of the time. And I'd have very little in issues unless I didn't use a lot of thread locker or any at all. I've seen too many horror stories, well, I've heard horror stories, but I've also seen too many things being track mechanic at the track and watching stuff fail while people are driving. So yes, always use some thread locker when screwing into metals or aluminum. So put them on those screws, screwing into the bulkhead. The set screw here for the shock ball end, I put the set screw into the shock tower first, both with Loctite on the one end and then on the other. And then once the set screw is halfway into the shock tower, I then screwed the shock ball end onto that and tightened it up. And we're good to go. Just make sure that set screw is halfway into the tower and halfway into your shock ball end, and then it will be nice and tight. And that's what we want. Alright, so once you're done that, you're almost done the transmission. We come over to the top side of page 7. Okay. You'll screw on the ESC tray, thread locker on those screws, simple 4 screws into the back of the transmission. That's that plate right there, okay? Straightforward, and away it goes. And that's step 6, the ESC plate installation. Page 7, step 7, rear suspension arm mount assembly. Now we're going to go back to the addendum booklet, okay? So, bring this over here. This, what I'm pointing at right here, this is the original manual. Here's the supplement. So, the difference of this is it's a setting change, and I've written it down here. There's 2 setting changes, actually. I wrote it down here on this part of the sheet. Oh, no, I did write it in both spots. Okay, new setting right here, the position of the anti-squat, the rear bulkhead piece there. That's the anti-squat anti-squat pro squat, I think, setting, because that piece controls, well, it stiffens the screws, where the screws bolt into. These holes here, that denotes pro squat, anti-squat on where they want it installed. Now the original manual said put it all the way at the bottom. That's where my other car is. This one is a new setting, put it second from the top. So that's a new setting, okay, so that's why there's an addendum. The lower arms screw on the same with 2mm spacers and screws. Put some Loctite, or Loctite thread locker. This stuff, I forgot to reference it. There, this is JB Weld medium strength thread locker. It's blue. Blue is ideal. Apparently purple is a new jam. I might get into that. Someone told me, and I was looking it up. Purple Loctite is for smaller screws, stuff like this, RC cars, and other smaller screws, and it's still medium strength. It's just designed for the smaller screws, so I might get in on that. Now back to the car. Up here on the suspension arm mount, this setting here, that's the same. As you see, those are the same. Okay, so that's not changed, but where the setting change is these aluminum spacers. It's a new setting because previously this included 8 2mm spacers for this area. However, for the colored cars, the second batch, it's only calling for 4. And I thought I was missing parts at first, but when I actually looked at compared the things here, you'll notice screw, spacer, sus ball, and then the sus ball holder. Okay, that spacer is now no longer there. They've deleted that, so it's a new setting. Screw just sus ball and sus ball holder. So we've deleted 2 mil spacer out of here. So that is a new setting, so that's why there's an addendum here. Okay, so straightforward. Use the thread locker onto the sus ball, and then push in or squeeze your sus ball holder onto the suspension ball. They're a little stiff to get on. I pressed mine in. I had to kind of press pretty hard, but I did get them in. My fingers aren't as strong as they used to be, so some other people might have that. Might be easier at doing that than me. So yeah, that's that. Once you get that all assembled, like it was down here, build this first, and then come down here. Use the new setting and thread locker spacer into the hole, or into that piece there, the brace, and then over there. Onto the side of the transmission, so you can see the arm installed right there. Right, very nice. Now, if I turn the page on the addendum booklet, this is showing page 10. So we can leave the addendum booklet alone for a little bit because we're at page 7. So, page 7, this is that completed thing from the addendum booklet, supplement booklet. Page 8. Now we're gonna be in this booklet for a little bit, but these steps are pretty straightforward. Where are we here? Rear suspension arm installation. So here we are with bag 4 contents of the rear lower arms. Okay, and you build them up by putting the aluminum shock mount into the arm. Straightforward. I forgot to write it here, but use thread locker on those screws into that because that's an aluminum piece. And that's where your shock will mount to, so you'll want that to be nice and sturdy. Then once you build the arms, you then bolt them onto the transmission using the sus ball holder and E-clips, and then they just the E-clip goes right on there, click, and away it goes. And that's simple enough. And do the right side in the same manner, and make sure you get the orientation correct. And note that the open sides of that, so it looks like this is what you'll want the arm to go on, like that, not the other way around. Okay. So pay attention to that orientation. And then once you finish that, we come down to the rear hub carrier assembly. You'll notice these are very similar if you've had predecessor YD2 cars. Those are the rear uprights from the SX, I think SX2 and up series. They work pretty good. So 2 mil spacer, the ball stud, the bearings there, I forgot to write to oil them, but that's up to you, but I like to put oil in them. The drive shaft's already pre-built, and that's how to disassemble them, put grease in them if you like, but they are pre-assembled, and they're good to go right out of the gate. You'll want to install the protector, which is a white piece over here. This piece that goes on the drive shaft, because the diff is an aluminum outdrive, and it's a little bigger, so those protectors protect the outdrive, and just get the right spacing. That's that white piece spinning in the cup there. Okay, so that's that. So install your a ball stud and then 2 mil spacer. Put it in that hole there where it's showing right there. Okay, and then you can go ahead with the drive shaft, install it. I forgot to write it here as well. Thread locker, that screw that goes into that hub right there, because that's pretty important. You don't want that coming off. And before you put the wheel hub onto the axle, insert the pin right there. Okay, wheel hub pin. And the only other thing you got to do here is, because this knuckle touches the lower arm in just a subtle way, they want you to trim away this knuckle so that it won't give you a bit of clearance on the rear arm. And this is what mine looks like. Let me get it under the light here. Yeah, there we go. So you can see how that knuckle on the back side is not round, and when I collapse it here, the knuckle can sort of sit nicely on the arm there, and I get as much droop as possible. So that is shaved on the bottom side there, right in the bottom side there. That's where it's shaved. You can just see that. Yep. And that is important. You'll need to do that so that you get maximum suspension travel from just the hardware alone. So make sure to do that, okay? It doesn't take much. You can take a knife and it'll shave pretty easily. And you can always just shave it away slowly. You don't have to do it one chunk. You can shave it a couple times and make sure you get the right amount. And then once you're done installing your rear hub carrier assemblies for both sides, make 2. Bring them over to your transmission assembly. And this here is because we're following the original manual. This motor plate is on the other side, but it will be on this side of the transmission because of the 4-gear. So just ignore that motor plate. But what it's illustrating is this is showing, with that motor plate being there, the front side of it is over here. Okay, and you take your hub carrier assembly, drop it into the lower arm here. Make sure that the holes for the pin are on the bottom side. Insert your pin with these 2 shims right here, well, spacers, and those spacers will be on the inside of this metal bracket. Pop the bracket up so you can see how it goes in just like that, and the the pin goes along there. There's the spacers, and the pin is held by this bracket. Okay, held in place by the bracket. Once you've got that held together, yes, there it is. I was going to say, where is it? So once you've got that sort of pieced together, come down here, 2 screws go in on the top side, just like this. See, the button head is right there. And put some Loctite on that to hold that in place. 2 screws both sides, and you're done installing the rear hub carrier. After that, all you got to do is make 2 turnbuckles with the large ball cup, the L size. This is all 1-to-1 sizing, so you'll know what to do. Don't forget to get the screws from your screw bag, which I forgot to reference early in this manual, or sorry, early in this Constructor's Digest when we started with the manual. So what I've done is, here's the screw bag sheet. And to make your life a little easier, because you have to hunt down the screws, right? I should have mentioned this a lot earlier, probably 20 minutes ago in the video. So these screws that you have to hunt down, for example, what's that, a 2.5 by 6? M 2.5 by 6, it's in bag 9, screw bag 9, was that 12, 11, 10, 9. So I use this sorting little tray thing, plastic tray, or carry case tray. Put the screw bag sheet there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, 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 all the way up to 12, and then your screws are easy to find. So for example, we needed 9, so just take your screw out of there, and away you go. That's my quick solution to this inefficient but sort of counterproductive solution for the screws. So that makes life a little easier anyways. Yes, so all you got to do here is build 2 turnbuckles from the large bulk up there, 4 of them. And note the positioning, because there is a difference. So you can see how that drops down a bit. That's what they're denoting there. Install the ball stud with a little bit of Loctite, which I forgot to make the note, because it's going into metal. And then install your turnbuckles as so. And this is the correct length, 13 mil for that turnbuckle, or those ones at the back of the transmission. Okay, so that's that. What are we at? 28 minutes here. We're doing pretty good. Most digests are about an hour, so we're doing pretty good, especially with the supplements. Now, once you've completed that, we will move on. We're at page 10. We will be going back to the supplement booklet, but not yet. Top of the page 10, rear body mount plate installation. 2 screws, and that plate goes right on top of the transmission. Put some Loctite on it. I forgot to make the note, but put the Loctite on it, and there it is right there. Straightforward. Once you've done that, okay, step 12 on page 10, slide rack assembly. And I made the note, the version 1.1 supplement booklet, because there is some changes here. So what they've done is they've done a new setting, and what the new setting is we are changing the hole mounting on the slide rack, because they wanted it on the bottom here before. Now they want us to put it on the top side of the slide rack, the top hole, and add a 2 mil spacer as well, because there was no spacer added here on the original car, on the batch 1 car. So that's a new setting. So that's a new tune setting. So that's the reason for the supplement. And don't forget to put thread locker on those ball studs, and on these ball stud and screw here, that these screws hold the rack arm onto the rack rail. Okay, Loctite, all that good stuff, or thread locker, all that good stuff. And after that, you move on to installing 2 rear bearings for the slide rack. One of them is on a straight screw and a bushing, and the other one is on its own bearing shaft and a washer, because the screw head needed to be flat and in such a orientation that it clears that rack arm. Okay, so that's why that's the difference of those two pieces. Bolt those on, use some Loctite on the screws, or thread locker, sorry, use some thread locker on the screws to keep them in place. And then here, this last front, this screw, this is the front bearing. So this bearing sits on a bearing bush and then a screw, and it's a standard M3 nut that locks it in place. Now use some thread locker on that screw for that nut because you don't want that coming loose. And this is where the slide rack gets its adjustment. That hole is slightly oblong, so it's a little bit longer. It's probably about 3 to 4 millimeters in total length. I didn't measure it, but that's roughly, I think, what it is. And it allows that screw and bearing to move front and back of the slide rack for adjustment. That is where I made the boo-boo in the unbox video for the purple car, saying that the slide rack was not adjustable at all. That was my mistake. I totally forgot that, yes, you can adjust it. It's just adjusted on one area instead of the previous slide racks, which you could adjust on the back screw-mounted cams for that. For the previous generation slide rack. So that's what's going on there. So I corrected my boo-boo, and when you install this front bearing, make sure you put that bearing in such an orientation that the rack moves smoothly, right? You want it to move smoothly and not tight. After a little bit of driving, you're gonna have to adjust this anyway. That's a standard thing, because the bearings will wear into the rack, and then there'll be a little bit of looseness that you'll have to tighten up. That's what my other car is currently sitting at, so I'm gonna adjust that next track day. That's what that is. So, page 10 supplement. From page 10, excuse me, a little yawn there. This is one of these late night filming ones, but I usually film my videos in long takes, so it's a lot of talking, it's a lot of breathing, and yeah, we're at 31 minutes, so we're getting there. Page 10 supplement we've completed. Maybe it's a good time for anybody to take a break if you're building your car alongside playing this video. Have a little drink break or whatever. I'm gonna wet my whistle right now, actually, before we get into page 11, front upper assembly. Alright, so here we go. Page 11, front upper arm assembly. We are looking at a setting update for this one. So we're still in the addendum booklet. See, there's page 11 in the original manual. We're gonna go to the supplement manual now, the booklet, because it's a setting update. And the big setting update primarily is the positioning of these ball studs. The spacer is the same, the stud is the same, the nut is the same, but the positioning is different. As you can see, the original one was put the ball stud all the way on the inside, now it's put it all the way on the outside. And this is where the first sort of, I guess I'll call it an issue, was with the assembly. This part, the upper arm mount, this part, you notice how we have 3 holes here that they're showing here, right? The outside hole, middle hole, and the outer hole. Well, they're showing 3 holes of adjustment on this part, both on the original and the addendum booklet. Well, the part that was received in the box, that part right there that those ball studs are mounted on, those holes, there's only 2 holes drilled on all 4 corners. So instead of 3 holes, there's only 2. And I don't know if that is this booklet not being updated correctly, this addendum booklet, or if the holes were drilled incorrectly in the sense that only 2 were drilled and not 3. So I'm not sure which it is. We might get a clarification at some point, but yeah, the manual's part illustration definitely didn't match the part that I got in the box. However, I'm still able to do the ball stud on the outer hole out of the 2, so I put it on the outside hole, and that's what we're gonna go with. So yeah, hopefully we'll figure out what happened there, whether we were supposed to get 3 holes or not, but whatever. If you have the same problem, just do that. Put it on the outside most hole instead of the inner hole, and just go from there. Now, moving on from that part, after you build up all that part with the thread locker and stuff, you'll come down here where you'll build the front upper arm, and this is where addendum happens. So I'm going to explain it to you, the reason why all these happen. So the original setting, for example, here on this upper arm, and the original manual, which is this thing, says 19.5 millimeters. Okay, The supplement booklet, which is this now, see this? The supplement booklet says 17.8 millimeters. Okay, fair enough. However, the version 1.2 supplement sheet, page 11, front upper arm assembly, okay? We come here. The booklet wanted 17.8. The 1.2 sheet says 16.5. So I'm going to go with 16.5. That pretty much says they're increasing the negative camber because the arm is getting shorter, so the wheel will be pulled in more. So that may make it a little more aggressive. So that's why we have this addendum to the addendum, is because they updated the setting further. I guess maybe after some more research and development, hopefully so. Or it could have just been a typo and they wanted to just correct it. One of the two from what they originally wanted, but that is what we're going to go with. So when you create these upper arms, front upper arms, do 16.5 millimeter gap when you do this, build it between the ball cup and the upper arm. Okay, so that's the first version 1.2 addendum on page 11. Okay, so after you do that, install your upper arms onto the ball studs. They just snap in really nicely, these ones. And then once you do that, you will bolt the upper arm mount to the slide rack assembly, and you're going to use 3 screws, use thread locker on them. And I've noted here a setting update. Okay, so there's 4 holes for you to choose, and the original manual down here wanted you to use the frontmost hole. Okay, for the installation. So put the screw in the front hole and then bolt it to the slide rack. The new setting update is use the second hole from the rear side of the upper arm mount. So use that hole, and that's the one I've used. So that's the reason down here as well for the addendum booklet, is why that is down here. So that's a setting update, so that's good. Good to see. I have a feeling this purple one will be a little bit more aggressive. Regardless of 4-gear transmission, they have tuned and changed a good amount of settings around the rest of the car. So I'm pretty excited to see how this car will go. I'm hoping it's more aggressive out of the box. But we will see. Now, moving to the next page of the addendum booklet, flipping that over. It says page 12 front chassis assembly, and there is a very good reason for this. So if we change over on the original manual to page 12, oh wait, okay, hold on. So yes, once you complete that on the page 11 addendum in the booklet, you flip to page 12, but you don't do it just yet, but it'll be on the same page, okay? Because we're on page 12 here. The top of page 12, we got to complete the slide rack front end assembly here by installing the front shock tower. 2 screws to install it, and then the set screws and the shock ball ends go on the front shock tower, just like they did on the rear tower, where we put the Loctite on both sides of that set screw for the shock tower side, and the shock end ball. And yes, I said Loctite again, I meant thread locker. Thread locker is your friend, and yes, so that is pretty self-explanatory in the sense of yes, it should go straight on. Once you've done that, you've completed the slide rack sort of front end there, and you can put that aside because we come down to the front chassis assembly, and I've done my little note here. We're going to use the version 1.1 supplement booklet as I had just turned the page. So if we bring that back here, I was saying there was a good reason for this, and that is because this front chassis carbon plate here, they've modified it, and they've given us a completely different version, but they have noted it in the supplement booklet. And I'll show you the biggest thing, which essentially is easy to illustrate here on the susball installation, which is page 13. It's just the next page over. And what that is the plate originally here. Can I show it? Yes, down here. Okay, so we'll just casually move over to page 13 really quickly. The plate here, the original plate they give you on the version, the batch 1 car, has 3 holes for the lower arm susballs to go on, okay? And crucially right here, there's a spacer and then the susball, okay? So on the addendum, the plate now has 5 positions, so that's nice. There's more tuning options available. That's good. I like that. And the position is also different because they wanted the middle out of the 3 holes here, but on this, out of the 5 holes, they wanted on the second most outer hole, so that's what I've done. Second most outer hole, and Oh no, actually, I need to fix that. I just looked. I put it on the middle hole of all 5. Look. I caught my own mistake. So I'll fix that. That won't take too long. But yes, I think I was going back between this so much. I just looked at that and was like, yes, stick it in the middle of the 5, which that's incorrect. So I put it in the middle of the 5. That's wrong for the out of box because I want my car to be true to out of box for my shakedown video. So I'm going to fix that. So they want it second most outer hole. And I'm glad I caught that on myself. So yes, good job, Nezo. All right, so make sure you put that correctly, okay? And then, as I was looking through the sheets, okay, they said here, right, to put it on that second outer hole. And then, no, okay, now I know why I did put that correct. I did do it correctly. This is where when I was building, I did confuse myself and had to take a small break. So, the original part had 3 holes. Put it in the middle. The new part has 5 holes, and at first they said in the addendum booklet, stick it in the second to outer hole. However, version 1.2 supplement sheets. I'm glad I made my note here. This is why I put it in the middle of the 5 holes, because the 1.2 supplement sheet, page 13, susball installation, stick it in the middle of the 5 holes. So I actually did it correctly. Good job, Nezo. Oh man. But also crucially, in both of these addendums, you can see screw, susball, screw, susball, no spacer. So that is a setting. So that is still the new setting. No spacer between the susball and that front chassis plate. Okay, so that's also a thing. So I think this is where some people thought they were missing parts, but actually it turns out we're not actually installing them. So they're not, it's like they're missing from this kit, but they're missing for good reason because they're not actually part of the new tune. So that could have been a thing. But if some people did actually miss other parts, we're going to hear about it. Definitely people will report it. I know that for sure. Could be a thing still. I know one person said they definitely were missing parts, but other people that said they were missing parts, it may have just been that they thought they were, because at first I thought I was missing parts, but it turns out it's just it's a new setting where the part that is not shown here that appears to be missing isn't actually wanted for the installation. So we're going to verify all that and figure that all out later. But right now, where were we? We were right. So V1 supplement, and this is the new part. So the process here, all this bits, is the same as this. The only difference is the illustration of the 5-hold part, because all this is the same. Nothing's changed there. Use the thread locker for screws into those holes, screws into those holes, because that's all metal, aluminum. And for your servo, you'll want to do that as well. I don't have the servo in there yet, so I didn't put any thread locker on those servo install screws just yet, because I'm going to have to take this. Install the servo, but if you install your servo right away, put some thread locker on those into the servo mount, and away you go. And then once you do that, you come down to the susball installation, and don't forget to move to the V1.2 supplement sheet as I was just talking about, and use that middle hole out of the 5 for your installation. Okay, and then we're going to be doing this whole double supplement thing again because we moved to page 14. In the regular manual. Look at this. Flip-flop. Here we go. Original manual here in my hand. And page 13. Page 14. Okay, so page 14, you'll build up the lower front arm. Okay. 3 screws go into that sus arm shaft holder is the name of it. And once you get that bolted in, use some thread locker to bolt that in place, and it'll stay nice. Note the position of the lower arm adapter, this long rod, and put your ball cup on and note the position of the ball cup. Okay, you'll insert that into the lower arm, and they want that 17 millimeters, or so I thought, because version 1.2 supplement sheet. And I'll show you the differences because this is one of those, I'm not sure if it's a typo or if they just changed the tune. Okay, the original manual says 17 millimeters between the ball cup and the suspension arm with the gap there. Okay, that's what they want. However, the version 1.1 booklet says 13.6, and that's significantly shorter. I thought, okay, that's a new thing. All right, sure. And then I looked at the version 1.2 supplement sheet, And on the 1.2 supplement sheet, page 14, suspension arm installation, 17.4. So really, it's only 0.4 millimeters more, so 0.4 millimeters more extended than the original spec. So I'm not sure if that was a typo or if that was a setting they just didn't like and then they've gone to this now, but 17.4 is what you want. And 17.4, yes, so 17.4, put that there, and then install your lower arm like so onto the sus ball holders using the E-clips, just like you did on the rear arms. And that is very straightforward, just clicks on and away you go. Okay, and then we're still not done with addendum, double addendum mode, because at the bottom of page 14, where are we here? Bottom of page 14, we're just building 2 steering rods. That's all we're doing. 2 turnbuckles, 4 ball cups, and do 12 millimeters for the gap, or so I thought. In the addendum booklet here for that same installation says 14.3. Okie dokie. But then I looked at the version 1.2, and the version 1.2, the sheet says 12.3. So, really, I'm not sure if that's a typo or not, or if it's just another setting they decided to go with, but it's really only 0.3 millimeters more than the original. So, yeah, make sure you do the 12.3 addendum, the 1.2 tune addendum for the steering rods, okay? And once you do the steering rods on page 14, we are finally done with the version 1.2 addendum sheet, so you can put that aside. We no longer need that, which was nice. That was the first sort of yes moment. I was done flipping through too many sheets here. So once we do that, I'm going to flip the booklet over onto its next page, which it's showing page 16, bumper installation. So we can put this aside for a little bit now and refer back to the standard manual. Page 14, we completed that. Okay, that's that last addendum. Done. Page 15. Here we are with the steering block installation, aka the front knuckle. Okay, and this, all we need to note is some thread locker on that wheel nut there for that set screw to hold that on nicely. All of these ball studs screw into plastic on the front knuckle. Make sure you place those spacers in the correct areas. All the ball studs are the same, so they all go there. Note that position for that ball stud. And the stopper pin only has 1 hole for itself to go in. Note the position of the knuckle. The bottom of the screw hole there is straight on, and the top side is to the back of the knuckle, okay? And that's important, because if you flip those upside down, the steering will be all wonky, and it won't work right. You don't want to do that. So, and then make sure that make sure that wheel hub fits onto the drive pin there, and then it sits on flush before screwing it on. Should look like that, okay? So should sit nice and flush. You should not see the pin, okay? And then, once you do that, you will take this slide rack installation from previous steps and 2 screws, use thread locker, bolt the front of the bulkhead there onto the front of the chassis plate, or the front, what did they call that? The front chassis plate piece or whatever, front chassis. I'm calling it the front chassis plate piece. So bolt your slide rack bulkhead installation onto the front chassis piece there, and 2 screws, like I said, to do it, thread locker it, and at the same time, whether you've done your servo or not, I prepared the, wait a minute, did I miss something? Ah, yes, I did. Okay, hold on. So I was going to say, I prepared the servo horn and turnbuckle thing ahead of time and did put it onto the car even though I didn't have the servo installed. And that was a step I actually missed. Step 16, servo horn installation. So let me just go back quickly. This is nice and simple. Servo horn, ball stud, and a turnbuckle assembled there with a set screw, 27 millimeters. Cut 1 millimeter off of 1 ball cup so that you get your 27 millimeters. I made a bit of a boo-boo, and I ended up slicing off 2 millimeters on one of my ball cups. No big deal though, it just left a little bit of a gap, but I still measured it to 27 millimeters on my caliper. Excuse me, and that was good to go. So I just attached the servo horn and what you call it here? Excuse me. The freaking, oh my god, my brain won't work. The link, the steering link between servo and slide rack. It shows, so once you have it built, whether you install on your servo or not, that's the piece right there, that plastic piece that goes onto the servo, and that will clamp in between of the servo horn and the servo. So once you have that pre-installed, whether you put it on the servo or not, over here, see it's showing it on the servo, but I don't have a servo in there, so this is where you'll attach the turnbuckle there. That's what the word I couldn't think of earlier. Turnbuckle from the servo horn to the slide rack. This is when you'll connect it on. So that's when I connected mine on. I just left my servo horn loose for time being. And after you're done that, then you can go ahead and install your front axles onto the car. Make sure you've got the positions of the ball cups set correctly, and then snap those in place. Those snap on pretty nicely. And then you're done that on page 15. Now, after that, page 16, this is the front bumper installation, and I wrote version 1.1 supplement because we just need to refer to the booklet so you don't confuse yourself. It's not really a setting change. It kind of is, but not entirely. They've opened up another hole here on the front of that chassis plate, that new chassis plate piece. And there's two holes for the front bumper so you can move it front and back, I guess, a little bit, and they want it on the back side hole. And the only difference here is you see the difference. There's only one hole there on the original manual, but there's two holes here on the second manual, the supplement manual. So that's what they want there, and use some thread locker, as I've noted, on the screw on that, what do they call that, chassis spacer. And then same thing here, thread locker that screw and thread locker that screw onto the chassis spacer, and install your front bumper. And then you'll have your front bumper installed, and that's that part of the page 16 addendum booklet. The next part of the addendum booklet is page 19 when we come to the shock. So we can put this aside for a few pages and continue on here with the manual and the original manual. So once you've done that part of the supplement, move down here, and this is the first time you actually really do anything with the main chassis plate, which normally you install stuff on the chassis plate first, so this one's a little bit different. And if you've noticed by now, the rear end and front end are modular, and you're going to see that in the next sort of steps here. Step 22 on page 16 is for the battery holder assembly. That's these things right here, this thing and these brackets back there. Okay. Now, two screws, and I put thread locker on them. I forgot to write, oh no, I did write it right there. I thread lockered pretty much all of this stuff. Don't forget the O-ring there. That squishes underneath that plate there, and that allows it to spin with some resistance, so that it keeps your battery in place. Okay, and once you do that, take that assembly and bolt it into those holes there. Thread locker on the screw, of course. And for the back plate, the battery holders back here, these carbon braces, there's a spacer there, and then use these screws and screw them on with M3 nuts, or M2.5 nuts, sorry. Now, the one thing I noticed is these screws just barely come out the top of that brace piece, and if you can see it under my light here, and not entirely, you can't really see it, you kind of yes and no, but anyways, the threads just go into that nut. I think they only go in about halfway, so I definitely put some Loctite on those because I don't want those nuts to come off at all. And I'm surprised they didn't use a longer screw there, but I can understand to a degree why, because the back screw and nut is just underneath that lower suspension arm mount. They could have used a slightly longer one maybe, but anyways, those nuts do install. They do go on, but they have very little thread to work with, so be very careful when you install those. So I definitely put thread locker on that, Loctite thread locker, so just so it won't come off at all, unless I want it to. So that's your battery holder assembly. Once you've done that, front and rear assembly installation. This is basically marrying the front and rear end to the chassis. And yeah, race car style, modular, so it's easier to work on. So we'll do the rear first, it shows, okay? You do the rear side and take the original manual will illustrate the motor plate on the other side. Don't worry, because your 4-gear, it's on the flip side. But that just is showing the front side of it, okay? Upper plate, the rear upper plate, and the rear plate holder. 4 screws, thread locker them so that they stay in place on the screw. And then put that on first to the rear end, and then bolt the rear end to your chassis using 5 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on the bottom side, and thread locker them. And you'll add this upper plate post between the chassis and the upper plate holder, okay? And put some thread locker on that as well. So total of 6 screws, 5 on the bottom and 1 up top there. And then your rear end is bolted in place. And then you come down to the front and 4 screws on the bottom. Again, thread locker those boys, and 4 screws in your front end bolts onto the chassis. And yeah, it looks pretty good once it's on there. And once you've done that, page 17, come over here to page 18, which is a very easy step. Upper plate installation. Your upper chassis plates here, these guys. 6 screws, 2 on the back side, 1, 2, and then 1 up front. Thread locker them, and then repeat for the other side. Okay, 2 on the back, 1 on the front there. And once you've done that, it shows the completed assembly. So you've pretty much got 90% fully assembled at this point. By this point, you're just missing body posts and a couple of little things, electronics, and the shocks. So once you've done that, a lot of people like to take a break before they get into shocks, because shocks can take you anywhere from 15 minutes to half an hour, and if you've never done them before and you struggle a bit with the oil or bleeding oil, they can take upwards of an hour sometimes. But just take your time, and you'll get them done, don't worry. And I'll give you some tips and tricks here. So we're 57 minutes deep on this. I said it would be about an hour, so we're almost done though. Once you get to shocks, yeah, you're about 90% done on these Yokomo drift cars typically. And then yeah, it feels like you've climbed a huge mountain once you've done the shocks. Yes, so having said all that, let's jump in. Step 25, front and rear shock assembly. Now I wrote right here, V1 supplement booklet. And I got it right here. Here it is, the supplement for page 19. And the only thing that is different on the supplement booklet for the shocks versus the original is the shock oil. So the original shock oil, they provided number 300 and number 200 oils, front and rear. And I was actually surprised, being a high-end kit, they didn't do 50 weight oil right off the hop. They're number 50. Well, in this new colored car, the limited run car, number 50 oil, and here it is, number 50. So that was nice to see in the unboxing. I couldn't remember if it was the 300, 200 until I got them into the manual and then read it. So that, yeah, that's nice to see. So this car will have more weebly wobbly, more weight shift availability right out of the hop, which should make it a little bit more active, which is really nice, because it is still paired with the option springs. They still give you the option springs, which is really nice. And of course, big bores dressed in purple. They do look yummy in purple. So we'll follow along with the booklet, or the addendum booklet here, since it's the new setting, number 50 oil. But that's really the only difference. Everything else is the same. So we build their shocks. Start with the E-rings. E-rings on your shock shaft. I always do the bottom side first. I clip the bottom side in by pressing it into the shock shaft, into the E-ring on a hard surface like a cutting board or my table. And then after you do the bottom side, you stick your piston on and clip your E-ring or E-clip, E-ring, E-clip, I've called them both, onto the top side. Use a pair of pliers and just kind of clip them in, just like that. I'm gonna have to do another shock building video at some point, and to illustrate all this lovely. But that's how you do that. And I did wonder in the unbox if these big bore pistons were if they were bored out the hole, because I noticed they were bigger. At least for whatever reason they look bigger than previous, but it's the 1.4 millimeter spec, which I think has been the new default big bore piston hole size for a little while now. It just somehow caught me off guard, so I just want to point that out. Once you get the pistons built onto the shafts, You move on to the shock body. Put the large O-ring inside of the adjusting nut. It fits into a little groove inside the adjuster nut there. Once you've got the ring inside the adjuster nut, I then used a little bit of the number 50 oil on that ring, just dab little oil on that ring, so that when you take this the preload collar adjusting out, or whatever you want to call it, once you take that with a little oil in the O-ring, you can then screw it onto the shock body much easier than when it goes on dry. And it will save you some time too, and save your fingers for that matter. So that's something I always do. Once you've done that, take your piston, shaft assembly, slide it into the shock body. And then, before you put the O-ring, the collar, and the O-ring cap on, take your blue O-ring, I usually stick it on the end of my finger, dab some of the oil onto that O-ring, get the O-ring wet, and then slide the O-ring onto the shock shaft. And what that will do is prevent the O-ring from being cut or sliced by the threads on the end of the shaft, and will prevent leakage. I used to not do that. I used to make a big mistake and put the O-ring into the body, into the shock body, and then shove the shock shaft through it, even though it was lubricated. And I wondered why my shocks would leak a little too soon. So that's a thing. So do that. Get the O-ring wet with the shock oil, then put it onto the shock shaft once it's already in the body. Then install your O-ring collar and your O-ring cap, and then you're good. Now, in other car kits, they'll mention using green slime to seal up the O-ring. I didn't do that on this car kit or previous car kits, but I'm going to start doing it. I just got to try it. I've never used green slime ever, but I've heard good things, and it does help seal up the bottom side of the shock anyway. So I'm definitely going to try it. I just got to go through the motion and figure out the best way to apply it, do some research, maybe watch some other people's YouTubes. But yes, I definitely have it on hand. I just haven't used it yet, but I've been told to use a small amount of it, and I think that's all you need. But anyways, that's an option, but they haven't wrote it anywhere here, so I didn't do it. And typically for drift, I find where I'm redoing oil, like topping up oils every 1 to 2 months, generally, after the car's been driven. And it leaks out, whether it leaks out of the top, the bottom, or is just slightly consumed. But regardless, that's the bottom of the shock body once you put the shaft in there. So after you get it in there, before you put oil in it, install the shock and the ball cup. Basically, they want 12 millimeters of clearance between the body and the ball cup. Basically, once you install that, you screw that ball end onto the bottom of the shock, onto the bottom there. As long as you can't see threads anymore, like just towards the ball cup goes up to the end of the threads, that's pretty much 12 millimeter. That's pretty much most amount of travel. Okay. And then what you'll want to do is, if you have a little shock holder like this, a little 3D print version, whether you have something like this or not, this is handy. But if you don't, just do them one at a time. I like to put all the shock pre-assembled pieces like that, the bodies into the holder, and then fill them up one by one, 1, 2, 3, 4, and with the piston all the way at the bottom, fill them up with oil. And then once they're filled with oil, take the shock shaft and slowly move it up and down inside the shock body, and that will bleed out any oil that's sitting in there and get rid of the air bubbles and stuff. And I usually let them sit about 5-10 minutes, and then most of the air bubbles are pretty much out. Once I see that they're out, I just move it up and down a couple times just to verify that. Once you've done that, then you can go ahead and I've had good success with this lately. Pop the diaphragm onto the top, and some oil will pop out of the side. Have a Kleenex ready to mop it up. Some oil will pop out the side, but the right amount of oil should bleed out the side once the diaphragm is on the top of the shock, just like that. You can just drop it on. You don't have to shove it on. Just drop it on. When you put your shock cap and the cap nut on and screw it all together, the correct amount of oil should bleed out. And once you've got that shock cap nice and tight to the shock body, as tight as it'll go, then move your piston, push your piston in, and it should come out nice and fluidish. So when you push it in, it should come out with decent force all the way the first time. It should be. If you push it and it doesn't go all the way in and it's too stiff and it won't go all the way, the piston won't go all the way in, like you can't push it all the way in, then you've got still too much oil in there and you need to undo the cap and redo it again. If you push the piston in and it barely comes out or doesn't come out at all, too much oil has come out and you'll have to reload the oil and try again. But generally, first try, now with these current version big bores, first try, pretty much first try with these newer revision big bore, I get the right amount of oil bled out per shot. So I'm pretty happy with that. That works really nicely. And once you get the shock cap on and your cap nut, then you can go ahead and install your springs. There's different front and rear, and the spring cups, the retainer cups on the bottom, they're also different front and rear, so pay attention to that. The front spring is a wide coil, and the rear spring is a much tighter coil, okay? So they're both soft, it's just one was engineered for the front end and one was engineered for the rear. Okay, so but they're both soft edition springs, and that's very nice. I do like these springs from Yokomo. They're very similar to the Reeve D spring, the soft spring that's offered, but the Reeve one is like just a little bit softer, so if you really want super duper plushness, that's the one you'll go with. But these ones are still really nice, and I'm very happy to see them still a part of this this MD1 kit, thrown in with the big bores. So if you buy a set of big bores all by themselves, they don't include these springs at all. So just so you know. Now, this is the addendum booklet, and after step 19, shock assembly, the addendum booklet is complete. Then you can breathe another sigh of relief because the version 1.1 supplement booklet is done. You can put that aside. And then in the regular manual, we will come back to the regular manual, and now we will be using the regular version 1.0 manual from here on out. Okay? What do we got here? Moving on, page 20. Install your front and rear shocks. Okay, you'll have to screw the ball stud in. Okay, install the ball stud. Use some thread locker on it. Install your ball stud to the lower front arm. There's only one position, sadly, that you can put that into, and then bolt your and then snap your shock in place, and they snap in pretty simply. Okay, there's the one position in the bottom, and on the rear side, you'll snap it into the top. That ball mount's already there. The stud on the bottom side goes into the middle hole for the out-of-box setting. So there it is in the middle hole of the bottom arm there. Okay. And yeah, once you got the shocks on, we are now like 97% complete as we move to the body posts, front and rear. Now this is where things get a little bit non-traditional. You're provided 2 sets of body posts, which is nice, and you'll end up with 2 extra sets of rear body posts, so you can sell them to friends or whatever, or keep them for another car. You'll have 2 extra front bumper assembly things. It's part of the whole that assembly tree. You won't be using these at all, so you can save them, give them to a friend, whatever. But that's what those come in. And we're using 4 front body posts for this car that go on the front and the rear. So the fronts go on straightforward, screw into the front bumper, and there they are. And you also notice this car does not come with a foam bumper at all, so that's a thing. Pretty much all the predecessor cars came with a front bumper, but they're starting to not put them in for some reason. So anyways, now on the rear, this is where things got non-traditional because the body post geometry, doesn't line up for about half of the Yokomo body lineage and body post geometry. It's close, but it's not exact, and a lot of people were not happy about that because a lot of their bodies just would not fit in the rear, or they'd have to drill another hole, and that just, no. Sometimes drilling 4 holes is enough, you know. Anyways, so in the rear, they want you to take the front body post, cut off 7 millimeters of the bottom side of the post, and then install it with an M3x10 screw. And this is exactly the same as the first batch car, because this is the original manual. And they didn't bother to update this at all because this didn't, in my eyes, didn't work out really well, because cut off 7 millimeters of that body post, you then use a 10 millimeter screw, and the screw bottoms out on the body post, and you're left with about half a millimeter or millimeter so of clearance between the body post and that bracket, the mounting bracket, and the body post was super loose. And I can illustrate this with my batch 1 car. Here it is. See this post? That's loose because that's based on that spec. And a lot of people noticed this. Somehow I got the other side tight, but this side was always loose. It's always been loose. It's going to be loose until I fix it. And I've come up with my own fix, the bad shop fix. So I casually looked around in the screw box to see what was left over or what extra screws we'd have floating around, because there's always a couple extras. It's sort of a new thing. Some are an additional extra just so you have a spare. Others just weren't used and were put in as extra or whatever, or weren't used because of the new addendums. Whatever. What I was able to come up with really quickly was the screws changed from the M3x10 to M3x8, and there's actually 2 of them left over. I went and verified that they weren't supposed to be used anywhere else. So I changed that, and there were actually 2 spare washers, sort of one biggish one and one smaller one, but there were 2 spares left over, so I used the M3x8 screw. So there it is there. This is my crude installation drawing, but it will work. That's a M3x8 screw, okay? Then you put the washer on the bottom side of the mounting plate there, the body post mounting plate, and then there's your body post with the cutoff piece. So if I show you on the actual car, you can see that there is, hold on, where is it? There's the body post, there's the screw, and then underneath the screw is a washer right there, and lo and behold, yay, it's nice and stiff. Yay, nice and stiff. So that's my temporary workaround. There's these other things you could do, or just replace them flat out with a third-party option or something, or just magnets. But if you're a body post guy like me, and you don't want them to spin or whatever right out of the box, this is what I did, and that's what I'm going to recommend for a quick solution. If you don't have any other spare screws, or you just want to get on track sooner, do that, and then your post will be stiff. So, having said that, it's up to you if you want to use these body mount sort of spacery bits. I never do. I just use straight pins because I'm old school. Just the pins alone, as you see there, just pins alone. That's just me. That's a personal preference thing. Yeah, so once you're done that, page 21, flip it over, and all that's left is to show you electronic installation. So here we are depicting the receiver, and they're showing putting it there with the antenna mount there. If you want, use a screw. If you want to do that to mount the antenna holder. Typically 2.4 gig radios and that sort of stuff, the antennas are short enough that they don't even need an antenna tube. I typically just tie them in a little loop and away you go, because they don't have to be sticking straight out of the car for maximum range, which is nice. And then there's the speed control install on the rear speed control plate using double-side tape for the receiver. And your motor installation with... Hello, welcome back. The GoPro camera I was using, well, the battery died. An hour and 12 minutes. And just a couple other things to finish up here. I was almost done. I'm surprised the camera let go. So I've had to switch to another camera, and so things might look just a teeny bit different, but we're just going to finish up here. So what I was talking about, where was I? Motor. So this is how to install the motor using provided screws, M3x6, and the washers. Use thread locker on the motor screws because, again, heard many horror stories and I've actually seen it happen where thread locker was not used and the motor shifted position and the pinion moved away from the spur and it fried the spur and or blew up the pinion. So one of the two. And yeah, you'll want to use thread locker on that. And people have told me that they have never had a horror story, but your time will come, trust me, it always happens. Use thread locker. It's your friend. And crucially, down here on the pinion gear, use thread locker on that set screw so your pinion doesn't get loose and back itself off and destroy your spur gear or shoot off your motor in the middle of your driving, and then you're embarrassed because you got no drive to your rear wheels. So do that. And I gotta make a note here that the pinion gear is sold separately. And I noted this in the unbox, and yes, Yokomo, if you're watching, pinion gears, put them back in the cars. I don't like that this is a new thing where pinion gears are not included, because you included them for 6 to 8 years, 7 years probably, with all the other predecessor cars. I'm pretty sure, if I go look back, put the pinion gear in the car. That's just a slight annoyance. I don't care that there's a big graph chart thing down here to tell me which ones I can use, and it's nice that there's recommendations here, but Give me a pinion gear so I can get on track sooner. Yeah, just do it. Like, come on. There's enough money spent on these high-end vehicles to have to go purchase a pinion. That's really annoying. You know, just stop that. Just stop it and fix that. I will not be. I will keep barking about that until you start including those again. Okay. After you do the pinion gear, all right. You're pretty much done. This just depicts how to install the LiPo battery, Shorty 1S size, the slim Shorty battery. Goes right in there, and then your battery plate right here, the battery holder, just put your battery in and then close the door, away you go. Pretty straightforward. And after that shows how the battery is installed there, okay, how it's depicted. And then if you got wheels and tires, install your wheel tire mounting tape foam thing. That's so we don't have to glue them. And install your wheels and tires, whichever ones you got. Use the wheel nuts there, which were provided already. Ooh, there they are. I'm not used to using this camera. I'm used to using my GoPro. This is a cell phone I'm using, but it's a nice one. It's a S20 Galaxy. There's the wheel nuts. That's what you'll use for the wheels. Okay, and that's just showing that there with the wheel nylon nut. Okay, and it's good that they're nylon. They're 7mm nylons. Those things, they usually never come off unless the nylon is no good. So yes, I like those particular nuts. And then once you're done that, putting the wheels and tires on, you're done, because the next page shows the Master Drift exploded view. So that's pretty straightforward. Once you get to this point, you are then done. 100p. And the exploded view just shows you all the part numbers and where things kind of go in a quick sense. Master Drift parts list. After that, memo area, more memo area, warranty registration, and what I expected, Master Drift setting sheet, but it's still not up. This car was released in, I feel like, oh wait, no, I unboxed my original car last October 2022, and they still don't have a setting sheet. I believe the last time I checked a couple days ago, there was still no setting sheet for the MD1 online. Let's go here. I want to write setting sheets for myself and stuff, and there's not even a setting sheet for some other cars either. Like, come on, hurry up. And another thing, since I'm griping at the end of this, just one little thing. When I download a manual, or want to download this manual, or check the versions or whatever, it's like a 25 megabyte manual, yet it takes like 5 to 10 minutes to download, because you get like 20 kilobytes to 50 kilobytes download speed. I think I've mentioned it before with their website. Bring your website up to date. Don't live in the 90s. Like, it should take me like 5 seconds to download a user manual, not friggin' 5 to 10 minutes. That's no good. That's unacceptable in today's online world. So, yeah, one, post this stuff, you know, when you release the cars, and two, setting sheets and other things like that. Yeah, get them up as ASAP as well, so that we can view them on our computer versus, you know, using this. I use this because I wrote stuff all over it, right? But being able to do the manual on a computer versus having a sheet all over your desk or papers and stuff, that's super duper handy. And then, yeah, just upgrade your web server. Come on, 20 kilobytes, 50 kilobytes download speed. That is, it's ancient, yo. Yes, so having said that, we are complete. Master Drift 1.0 purple, there it is. It's going to get shaken down tomorrow. I'm going to put some electronics in it, and away we go. And it'll be interesting to see versus the first batch car, which was pretty mild in performance and driving feel. And it left a little bit to be desired, but once I put a little bit of a tune on it, it started to come alive. And then after I did 4-gear mode on my other car, it started to come alive a bit more. It was a little more aggressive in nature, so that's good. So with the setting changes and addendums to this car, with the addendum booklets and stuff here, I'm hoping that this will be a little more aggressive and a little more darty or whatever, a little more lively on its feet than the first batch car. So there we go. Yeah. So yeah, this I'm not used to this camera for doing this, but that's okay. We persevered. This camera still has some battery left. So there it is, the Master Drift 1.0 Constructor's Digest, complete. And at this point, your car should be complete, and you should be ready to put in electronics in your car, show it off to your friends, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you'll have some spare bits. Here's some of the spare bits left over. Some of this is their race car parts. You won't use those. This is from their race car. You won't use those. That's the last of the shocks. There's a leftover of the ball cup tree. Okay, and you'll have some screws left over from your screw tray, but those act as sort of spare screws and just extra screws that were not used. And yeah, good to go. Thank you for watching. Hopefully your build went successful and it was a good build for you. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Comment if you watched the whole video and made it all the way through, build or not. And yeah, drop me a line on the comments for sure if you were missing parts, or if you didn't get the addendum sheets, or if you're looking to get them. I'm definitely going to scan them in and have them on my computer, because they're not even available on the website, which is pretty annoying. So yeah, if you need them, comment, let me know. Try and get them to you somehow, and we'll go from there. Yes, Master Drift 1.0 Purple, Constructor's Digest complete. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the shakedown coming in the next day or so. And yeah, you have yourself a good day now. Bye-bye.